Is there one story in here that is your favorite? That every time you read it, you're like, that's my favorite. That speaks to me in a way that no other story speaks to me.
Do you want me to go or do you want to go?
Yeah, you go.
How cool would it be if we had the same story?
It'd be amazing.
You know, like a teller, you know? What is this, is this a married talk show? But David and Goliath, right? Because for me, it's my dad. That was my favorite story. My dad used to act it out because, you know, he pastored for 30 years. So he would act out and he would do like Goliath's voice, and then he would do David's voice, and he would do the slingshot and all that. And so David and Goliath reminds me so much of my dad. And David and Goliath became this picture of Jesus is your David, and life's going to have Goliaths, but he's always going to be there, and it's going to seem sometimes like you're overwhelmed. And so David and Goliath for me is one of those stories that at a drop of a hat, I love it. Let's talk about it. I'll reenact it like my dad did. And when I first started preaching as a 16-year-old guy, I went to Alaska and did 7 nights of revival. I think I told David and Goliath every night. I didn't have much more material, so.
And it worked.
Well, debatable.
That's good. Is it so bad to say my favorite story is actually probably the very first one, which is the story of creation? Mm-hmm. And what I love about it so much in the storybook is that each story has an introduction and a conclusion. And in the introduction to the creation story, it is a story, actually Judah, his cousins all made fun of him and for how big his head was because he has a very large head and large lips and a nice jawline.
Well, no, I got voted. We went with all of our cousins. Who has the biggest nose? Who has the biggest lips? Who has the biggest head? It was all me. And I was like, well, it's proportionate. You know, like,
so handsome. But talking about, so the introduction is kind of a version of that story. And then is there something wrong with me? Was I made with something wrong? And then going into the story of creation and how God created human beings. And I just think that sense of identity and purpose is so important that I love the first one.